common sense. It ain't common anymore. That's for sure. That's for dang on sure. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're going to talk about today. What is up, guys? It is Friday, July 3rd, 2026. Wow, man. Incredible. Tomorrow is 4th of July, and I couldn't pick a better time to make this video. I was going to make it last week, but I decided to talk about this today. As you guys know, I love America. I'm a patriot. I'm a bit of a mini historian of our country, and I just love it, man. I just love it. But what I want to talk to you guys about today is common sense. And the man that authored common sense, literally authored common sense, is a man that goes by the name of Thomas Paine. You guys know Thomas Paine. Some of you may just know his name, but he's almost like the poor man's Thomas Jefferson. A lot of people, heard the name in school and stuff like that, but I've asked people, do you know anything about him? And they basically don't. So let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll get into the video. First of all, Thomas Paine, great man, born in Europe. He was a failure. He was born September 29th, 1737. And he was born to a pretty rough dad. His dad was a guy that made corsets. He wasn't a rich man, but his dad was very, very rough on him, and he was disappointed a lot in Thomas. And Thomas wasn't good with authority. He did not like, I'm not saying he didn't like his dad, but he didn't like his dad's tactics, and he didn't like the king and monarchs and stuff like that. He didn't get along with authority. So he tried to do some things in his life. And in all intents and purposes, he was a failure. He failed out of school when he was like 12, 13 years old. He got fired from a few jobs. He tried some other things, failed, had 2 marriages. One of his wives died and another one divorced him. He lost a child. Got away from his dad in his 30s and went to the big city, London. Failure in all aspects, man. He was just, he was very talented, but he was a rebel. He never fit in over there in Europe. He just didn't like it over there. And he just didn't like kings, and again, didn't like authority. He was just a very outlandish person compared to everybody else. He was a black sheep. So he met Benjamin Franklin, who was probably the most famous person in the world. Depends on who you ask. In London, England, I believe in 1774 he met him. And Benjamin Franklin took a liking to him. Now, Benjamin Franklin, even though he was a very famous man, he was very nice to a lot of people, and everybody loved Benjamin Franklin. He was just an incredible man. And so Thomas Paine warmed up to Benjamin Franklin like everybody did. Benjamin Franklin definitely liked the young ladies. You know. But anyways, Thomas Paine was telling Benjamin Franklin about all his troubles and stuff. And Benjamin Franklin said, look, man, go to America. Start all over and go to America. And, he was a bit of a decent writer at the time. He was writing a few things under some pseudonym names, which I'll get into in a second. And Benjamin Franklin wrote him a letter of a recommendation. Now, it was a generic letter of recommendation. Benjamin Franklin did that for a lot of people. And he did that, and he said, you know what, I'm going to go. Because, again, the most famous man in the world said I can do it. I can start all over, and he wrote me a letter, and he sees something in me, so he got on a boat and left. He was headed to Philadelphia, America. Now, America wasn't America the way it is now, because, again, this was 1774. And so he left, and it was a very, very rough passage over there. It was, very bad. The seas were bad. The weather was bad. A lot of people got sick. 5 people died on the boat on the way over to America, including him. He almost died, Thomas Paine. And America could have almost died with him, and I'll explain in a minute. So when he finally landed on November 30th, 1774, on the shores of Philadelphia, he got out of the boat, and not under his own power. He had to be literally put on a stretcher, and he was bedridden for 6 weeks. He nursed himself back to health along with some doctors and stuff, got better, got back on his feet and started working in about March of 75. Now, 75 is obviously the year when the war started. And some of you might be thinking, well, why would he get involved in this stuff, right? Why would Thomas Paine get involved with America? He's a guy from Europe, Great Britain. He was British. Why? Well, because he knew the tyranny better than they did. Even though America, we were their subjects, he knew them up closer than we did. And so he knew King George III was not the best guy in the world. His dad loved him, but he didn't. And so April 19th, 1775, we know what happened in Lexington and Concord. The first shot was fired, shot heard around the world, and then the rest was history. And then what happened? Well, he was working in Philadelphia as a writer. He was a really, really good writer. And he wrote a pamphlet, dare I say, what's crazy, he landed in America in November 30th, 1774. Didn't get back on his feet until mid to late January 1775. If you'd have told him that he was going to write the most important document for in human history to get everything started, he probably wouldn't have believed him. Nobody would have believed that, especially coming from a failure like that. Well, he wrote a document called Common Sense. Common Sense. And it's a 47-page document. If you haven't read it, look it up. And again, everything that I'm saying, don't trust me, verify. Because I could get some dates wrong. I always do. Not good with numbers. And Thomas Paine, if I said Thomas Jefferson, I meant Thomas Paine, because sometimes I say Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Paine, he wrote that under a pseudonym name. Who else wrote something? A very important document under a pseudonym name. But anyways, he spoke very plainly in it, and he signed it by an Englishman, he says. Common Sense, by an Englishman. And what he basically wrote in there, this 47-page absolute masterpiece, is he wrote that America can't beg for, how do I say this? Beg for peace with King George III. We can't beg for, oh, can you be nicer to us? He was coming from a completely different angle. This thing sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Why? Because he's saying the quiet part out loud. If the phrase, the quiet part out loud was a person, it's Thomas Paine. Okay, I'm telling you that. Read Common Sense. Now again, it's a different type of language back then. It's English, but the way they talked, it was different. We've completely screwed up the English language, but I'll get into that in another video. And so Thomas Paine spoke very plainly, almost like kind of like a Donald Trump. He spoke common sense, and he spoke to people like they're in the 5th grade. That's how he talked. And he goes, look, we're going to say the quiet part out loud. Now, some other writers have talked about, breaking off from Great Britain and King George III, but not like the way Thomas Paine did, And Thomas Paine, again, said the uncomfortable things out loud that everybody else knew and was thinking, but was afraid to say it. And he said it. Boy, did he say it. And what did that pamphlet do? It set off a new revolution. Okay? It just did. And again, we were in the midst of the war, but a lot of people lost hope, and a lot of the loyalists were still, again, loyal to King George III. Some of the George Washington's army was down and out from losing a lot of battles. A lot of people don't know this, but George Washington lost more battles than he won. No, we won the war, but... And so George Washington read that pamphlet, had the pamphlet read to his army, and he brought Thomas Paine with him. Thomas Paine actually did a little bit of fighting. He wasn't a good fighter. He was a great writer. But it set off everything that happened after that. And again, it was written in about January 10th, 1775. And again, 6 months later, just about 6 months later, the Declaration of Independence was written, again, with common sense in mind. Let me pause right here. Another historic date today is the 17.5 anniversary of Bitcoin. Bitcoin came out January 3rd, 2009. Today is July 3rd, 2026. And it's been 17.5 years. This is why I'm also doing this as well. Because to me, Bitcoin is common sense. But Thomas Jefferson, them boys, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger, what's the other guys? Was it Roger Sherman? And the other one that started with an R. Richard Livingston, I think his name was. Something like that. Livingston and Sherman. I always get the R's mixed up with those. Nobody really knows them. They went to Philadelphia and wrote the Declaration of Independence. Now, the Declaration of Independence wasn't written on wasn't done on July 2nd. It was still being edited by the four men with Thomas Jefferson. But again, the common sense pamphlet was in mind when that was happening. And so when it was finally, they took a vote up there in Philadelphia on July 2nd, 1776. And that's when we declared our independence officially. But then it became really official when the document came out that we read today that marks our 250th anniversary tomorrow. And so, dare I say, without common sense, hear me, without common sense, we wouldn't have the Declaration of Independence. If common sense would have died, quote unquote, the pamphlet that the man wrote, Thomas Paine, died on that boat, or if he said, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore when he was failing over there in Europe and Benjamin Franklin didn't see something in him and didn't come over here, if all those things didn't happen, I will say this, man, as a person that have studied a little bit of history, I don't think we would have won the war without that pamphlet, Common Sense. Matter of fact, I should have said this first. I don't think the Declaration of Independence would have been written. And if it were written, it wouldn't have been written like it was the version you see today. And I don't think we may not have won the war. It gave so much a boost. It gave us momentum. It gave us hope and much more allies, if you will, to wake up and say, wow, there's common sense. Well, I think we need that today. Common sense has absolutely gone out the window. Now, politically speaking, back then, we needed common sense, and we still need it today, politically speaking. But monetarily speaking, we need it as well, I believe. We can't negotiate with people anymore. We cannot negotiate like Thomas Paine said, because he said, hey, the reason why kings are bad because they're just born into this, and we're listening to somebody way over there on an island. It doesn't make any sense. He just went off on these people, and everything he said was facts. Again, common sense is the cousin of truth. And whether you want to believe it or not, that's just what it was. It was truth. And that's why it resonated by so many people. The problem in today's political and monetarily division in America is simple. They believe what they're told on their side. And people that, let's just say, vote for communism, Marxism, and socialism, think the government owes them something, so they'll negotiate with the government and say, oh, please, yeah, I'll stay home and not work, and please, give me free stuff and stuff like that. Our system is broken, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot negotiate with the Fed anymore. The Fed has to go, okay? And we need to destroy the infrastructure up there or down there in Washington, D.C., the swamp, or the toilet, I call it, and break that incentivized, crooked political currency unit, evil military industrial complex war machine down there, and we need to break it apart. We have to get new people in there, and we have to break it from the bottom up. We have to break this system because we're never going to pay the debt. So we can't negotiate with these people anymore. Like Thomas Paine said in 1775, right? This is common sense, and that's what I try to bring. And I'm not saying it's about me, bro. It's about us. And I think politically speaking, and in your life and health and everything else, but politically and monetarily speaking, I think they go together. I think common sense definitely plays a part. And this is why, to this day, Thomas Paine's Common Sense pamphlet is so revered. Unfortunately, speaking of revered, we had some propagandists back then. And I'm not saying they were bad for this, but that's what happened. You got to have propaganda. Because a lot of times when we say propaganda, we say that it's a bad thing. Well, sometimes propaganda is good. Like, for instance, Paul Revere and Samuel Adams, which, again, these guys were not much maybe Paul Revere, were second-tier founding fathers. You got the big six, obviously, the founding fathers, and you got this second-tier Thomas Paine, Samuel Adams, them boys, John Jay and the like. Samuel Adams was a master propagandist. He was. Now, if it wasn't for his propaganda, we wouldn't have America today. Him and his cousin, John Adams, didn't get along, but he was a master propagandist. So was Paul Revere. How? Well, during the Boston Massacre, and they lied about that. They lied about the British soldiers attacking them. And also, again, this is thanks to the propaganda. He you know, kind of lied and stressed the truth. But what Samuel Adams was a master at was giving out information to the other 12 colonies saying that, hey, our, how do I say this? The cruelties that are put upon us in Boston, because everything happened in Boston, was the fault of King George III. And he, exaggerated it. It was bad, but he exaggerated, but also said it's going to come to you too. And he propagandized it along with Paul Revere. If it wasn't for them, Thomas Paine wouldn't be able to write that pamphlet and send it off to everybody, because they are already getting the propaganda from Samuel Adams. Well, we need some propaganda, ladies and gentlemen. We need that. And again, not in a bad way, not the CNN, MSDNC way, not that way, but the propaganda of, hey, man, if you don't do this, if you don't vote right, and if you don't get our money right and stop the system and stuff, we're going to be under a communist system. That's what's just going to happen. And so we need to put the narrative out there, because it's a narrative war. I believe personally there's more of us than them. What I mean is people that are out here telling the truth and talking about common sense. I truly believe that. But people need to step up and talk about it and not be scared. I've been down a little bit about my channel and stuff like that, but I always go back to Thomas Paine. Of course, I go back to my grandparents and my lineage and where I come from, and the people that are after me, my kids and my grandkids. And this ain't about me. I can't quit. It ain't about me. It's about the message. And when you look at something in the bigger picture, and when you want to give up, it's and everything's going against you, it's tough, man. Nobody thought America could win this war. Nobody, and we did. And if you were a betting man and you saw everything that was happening up to Thomas Paine, I'm talking about when he was getting pulled off on a stretcher in Philadelphia, and somebody told you all about him, because he was a nobody then. Nobody knew him, and said, hey, man, we have some betting odds. This man will be one of the founding fathers of America. He failed at his marriage. He failed at this. He failed at that. He failed it to his kids. To his dad. He failed at being a tax man. He failed at this. He failed at everything. And now he's here, and he's almost dead, and he's on a stretcher. Would you bet that he's going to write a document to change the world? The odds would be terrible on that, and probably even more terrible on our country winning. So the bottom line is, don't ever quit. Keep your mind on the things that you want. Look forward. And remember, I know common sense ain't common, but it's up to you, me, and everybody to make sure common sense is common, and make sure that we take our country back with truth, a little bit of propaganda, and most importantly, with a lot of common sense. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And again, guys, we're going to be celebrating this weekend for the 4th of July, and I love it. It's absolutely great. The fireworks are going to be going off, and we're going to be 250 years old. We're a young country. Stay tuned tomorrow for my Satoshi Saturday. I'll be talking more about this, a little bit about Thomas Jefferson. Let me get out of the sun for my phone overheats. And the Declaration of Independence and all that. And I'll be doing a live stream as well. So I'm going to do a Satoshi Saturday first. Look out for that. But I'm also going to be doing a 250th anniversary live stream of this country. And speaking of common sense, we need some common sense with this money, this monetary system, because the monetary system we have today is not common, and it don't make any sense. It's broken. It's terrible. And the people that support this and wait for the money that they give them for free, and under this trying to defeat the capitalist system and trying to be a communist system, they don't have any common sense either. There's only one common sense money out here, ladies and gentlemen. There's only one that'll break this system, this old one, the one that's messed up. We can pay off this national debt, stop inflation, hit the reset button, and again, bring common sense back and these evil people to their knees. And if I had to take a guess, I'm pretty sure You guys already know what that is. It's the best way to save. And for me, the only way to save. And that's Bitcoin. I love each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace and love, guys.